Diagnosis is the scariest part, I think, for families. You're giving a family like the hardest news they are ever going to get in their life. This is the worst thing a family could ever go through.
As medical providers, as much as we wish we could cure this disease, that's often not possible.
The needs are immediate, and I have to say, working with Clayton Dabney, I know that I am going to hear back right away, which means I can report to my parents and kind of alleviate their worries, because there are so many worries at that time.
It was very meaningful for our staff to have Clayton Dabney. I think that's something that oftentimes gets overlooked in these foundations.
We're often scrambling for what else we can provide a family in their deepest moments of pain.
You feel completely useless. You've not been able to help them beat the disease. They're suffering. You've spent all this time with them, and then you can't do anything for them at home.
Hey, you know what? There's this group called Clayton Dabney, and they are amazing, and this is what they can do for you, and this is how we can use them to help fulfill what your child is asking for and what your family is asking for.
When you live a middle-class life and you have your regular paycheck coming in, we forget what it's like for families that are living on the edge. And a lot of my patients are living on the edge.
These are moments of crisis for families. No family is ever prepared to hear that their child has cancer. No family is ever prepared to endure the long road of treatment that they have ahead of them.
They were the fastest to respond, and obviously positively. Up until that point, nobody else had said they would be able to assist us.
The Clayton Dabney Foundation is an immense help to us as medical providers to be able to provide something tangible to help their suffering and to help in this moment of pain.
Doesn't make it any easier, but I do know that it's important for them to have time just laying in the bed with the kid and telling the kid how much they love them.
So the value of that time is pretty remarkable. And so to be able to be away from work or other obligations, or be away from the regular demands of life and enjoying time together, it's a pretty intense human need.
No more treatment, no more needles, no more procedures. What are we going to do? And I sat down and I talked to the mom. Very poor family, but they were used to living on the lower rung of the socioeconomic ladder. So that wasn't a concern for them. They wanted the memories. And Mom was so distraught that thought that she'd never have Christmas or a birthday or Easter, any of those things. It was overwhelming. They rented out a Santa suit, a bunny suit, birthdays, Halloween decorations, and they had a year's worth of celebrations and pictures and family photos made with that child in a matter of one day.
To provide a child with a birthday party almost sounds like a small thing, but with a child that it may be their last birthday, it's enormous. It's enormous.
Don't you want to stay at home with your child and take care of her at home? I said, I have a foundation. She said, well, we have these taxes on the house that we have to pay. I said, I think I can take care of that for you. And through the foundation, they were able to pay the taxes on the house, and the mom was able to stay at home with the child until the child passed.
He knew what his odds were against fighting against cancer, and it was not good. And all he wanted was an iPhone. That sometimes we take by granted because everyone has one, right?
I asked the patient, what are some things that you want to do? How do you imagine yourself living life to the fullest? And she said she wanted to go to SeaWorld.
I knew this boy for a couple of years, and he would always talk about his grandparents who were in Mexico. His parents were really hard workers. He had several siblings. And his one wish in talking to him about what he had hoped for was to be able to see his grandparents again. And the family couldn't travel, and they didn't have the means to fly his grandparents up. So we were able to work with Clayton Dabney to get a couple flights for his grandparents who hadn't seen him since he was a small boy, and to reunify the family. It was pretty great.
I have countless examples of just really neat experiences of families that have benefited from Clayton Dabney. His parents were just so grateful they had something positive to focus on.
A foundation in Dallas, Texas, was sending the money to her landlord. I said, it wasn't me. All I did was make a phone call. It was the Clayton Dabney Foundation that paid that rent.
I reached out to Clayton Dabney and submitted an application for this young girl to go to Disneyland with her sister and her parents, and it was granted, it was approved, and they were able to go to Disneyland for several days. And it was exciting. I think, I only knew this girl as being sick. I never really saw who she truly was. And seeing her pictures from Disneyland, we saw the twinkle in her eyes and could see who she was.
It makes me feel good to be able to help. And I think especially for the parents that the dads want to stay home and they don't get the opportunity to be the father at the very end because they're worried about working. So knowing that this organization is out there and I can offer that to them so that both parents can be at home makes me feel really good for the kid.
I always used to say to myself, there's people in Dallas that are thinking about us. And to me, that's amazing. Here's a family in Washington Heights who's struggling to get by, pay the rent. And there's people in Texas, I think of you guys as a small foundation. They're thinking about people in New York, live in the boroughs, that don't have a lot, and they're raising funds. They're thinking of us, and that is really special. It's really special. These are strangers. They don't know us. And they are supporting families just because they know they're going through the hardest time. So it is huge. It's huge what you do. It's huge.
And for the mother, a little bit of dignity and respect for what they were going through.
There were heavenly interventions.
She would have lost her job and her car, and the other siblings would have had nowhere to live. And she would have stayed with her son, and he still would have died. And then they would have had nothing to go back to. That just didn't happen.
I have seen the relief on a family's face when they know that Clayton Dabney has them taken care of.
They've been around a long time. I hope they're around forever.
Clayton Dabney makes things that seem impossible possible for families to achieve their dreams or their goals in the last remaining moments they have together as a family.